Lozismo, and MDNC.
Okay, so that's how the movement grew so very quickly. And this movement now is actually quite formidable in entire Indonesia. One problem of the Muhammadiyah movement is that it is an Indonesian phenomenon. And this is the problem. Hanya Indonesia sahaja. So they are only interested with the Indonesians. And this is the limitation of of Muhammadiyah and many movements in Indonesia. There is a Muhammadiyah movement actually in Singapore, but they only use their name. They are different Muhammadiyah altogether, right? So this is something that I want you all to take note of. One issue that you see when it comes to the study of Muslim modernism in Southeast Asia is that Malays are very parochial amongst themselves. When they want to change, they change themselves. They don't want to change the entire world. Arabs, the other way around. When they want to change the Arabs, they want to change the entire world. That's why the Arab way of thinking became very influential overseas. The same is it with the Turkish, the same is it with the Indians. The Indians, reformers like Syed Ahmad Khan and others always think the Indians have the best ideas. Right? We are better than the Arabs. Yeah? So that's why about the Malays, generally one thing you all to understand about the Malays, and you meet some Malays here from Indonesia, they are very humble. They call it rendah diri. They always put themselves down. Right? As I was telling my class yesterday, this joke, who heard this joke yesterday? I will tell you, just crack the joke first so that you all will wake up a bit. If you step on the leg of an Arab, what would the Arab do? He step on your head. Right? Because you step my leg, I didn't step on yours. So they will step your head. When you step on the leg of an Indian, what would the Indian do? Hey, why you can't step on my leg? This is my leg, no? Very painful, no? Huh? Is it your leg? It's my leg, no? They will argue with you because Indians like to argue. There's even a book by Amartya Sen called The Argumentative Indian. I didn't make this up. He made it up. Okay? He said that Indians are argumentative. But if you step the leg of an Indonesian Malay, a Javanese especially, you step, right? What would he do? He will say, that's very painful. Or they say in Indonesia, sakit pa. They will not do anything to you. And because of this character, the peaceful and soft character of the Malays, even their movements don't travel overseas. Only stick amongst themselves. Again, it sounds a little bit generalizing and essentializing, but if you study the movements that have been developed from Muhammadiyah to Nahdlatul Ulama to PERSIS, Persatuan Islam, they are all Indonesian phenomenon, not a global phenomenon. Okay? So then, other than Kiai Dahlan, which was largely a social movement first and then became intellectual as well, there is another movement that is a more intellectual in character. And this guy actually came from part of my own family, the Hadrami family, Syed Sheikh Al-Hadi. He says that we need to emphasize on the intellectual part more than the social part. And in 1900s, these people, these Arabs, they were actually urban elites, philanthropists, and scholars. What is philanthropists? Philanthropists are people who would always give charity for other people to set up schools, to set up clinics. Together, they came together and they were influenced basically by Rashid Reda. This man, he traveled all the way to Egypt to meet Rashid Reda. Right? And every time when they have a problem in Southeast Asia, they would write letters to Rashid Reda. Rashid Reda would answer and then send his answer back to him, and he would publish it. They were influenced by reformist thinking in Egypt and other parts of the Arab world, and they found their own printing presses and also educational institutions to disseminate the message of Muslim modernism. Syed Sheikh Al-Hadi lived in Penang in Malaya, but he was not born in Malaya. He was actually born in Riau, Pulau Penyengat, and today we can call him an Indonesian Malaysian at the same time, because in those days, people move very easily between Indonesia and Malaysia. There's no such thing as, I'm Indonesian, you're Malaysian. This is a modern nationalist construct. In those days, there was no such thing. And they set up what they call as the Al-Imam movement. And Al-Imam, the magazine that they published, was actually another way of disseminating the message of the Al-Manar, which was Abdul's magazine. It was a platform to remind the forgetful, to arouse the slumber, to guide those that have been led astray, and to give voice to the wise. So this magazine, they publish for everybody to send messages to them. If today you have Facebook, where you can set up a Facebook group and everybody can comment, this was Facebook in those days. Their version of Facebook. Set up a magazine. That magazine, anybody can send any articles and we publish them if they are progressive. They even have people who criticize them and they publish them too, and then they criticize the critics. So very powerful. It's really like social media that we know today. And these publications facilitated the growth of Islamic nationhood in the Malay world. And it was a style of thought that emphasized on Muslim loyalty to the homeland while maintaining transnational links, affiliations, and responsibility towards Muslims globally. So, if Muhammadiyah says we need to focus on the Indonesians, the Al-Imam movement said, no, we need to focus on the Malaysians, on the Malays, but we need to also export our thinking overseas. Right? So they are a bit different from the Muhammadiyah movement, which was very social. And what is interesting about this group is that in order to wake people up during lectures like this, and to wake them up from their superstition, you need to write fiction. What is fiction? Novels, short stories, because young people don't like to read intellectual works. I went to the Cave Books, you know, the Cave bookshop next door. I thought I can find good English books, or most of it are just novels. You ask the bookshop, why are there only novels here? No academic books, nobody buys. So there are a lot of academic books there actually, but nobody buys the books, but people buy novels. So they also had the same problem then. They say that since people only like to read novels, hence we write our own novels, but put the message of Muslim modernism in these novels. And they basically did that. And that is the intellectual movement. The other movement is actually a political economic one, and this comes in the form of this group called the Syarikat Islam. Syarikat Islam is basically in Java. It was set up in 1911 by this man named Haji Agus Salim and Haji Omar Said Chokrominoto. And that's a very long name, So that's a normal Javanese name. Subandario, Chokronimoto, Sato Virjo, Karto Virjo. It's everything is O. Right? Pada O, Aja. Ya kan? Kartanaja. Yeah, I always have a problem pronouncing. So when I go up the stage and I give speech in Indonesia and I have to say the professor's name, I usually ask them first, Baba, is this Chokronimoto? Or then you can do it well. Maybe you can pronounce it better than me. Chokrominoto. Yeah, it sounds a bit Japanese. So what's interesting is that they are not only against the Dutch, they are also against the Huaren, the Chinese. Why were they against the Chinese? Why they don't like the Chinese?
Because I think the Chinese dominate the trading.
Okay, some more. What are the reasons why they don't like the Chinese? What? Pendatang asing, which means that they come from overseas. Why else the Indonesian natives don't like the Chinese? Can you all think? Chinese must think, Independent, ijtihad now. Independent reasoning, yeah.
Because they always cooperate with the colonial.
Because the Chinese always cooperate with the colonial powers. Some more, why they don't like the Chinese? Come, think. Why the Indonesians don't like the Chinese? Why? Because of the food. Why? What's wrong with the food? It's too healthy. Indonesians like to eat unhealthy food. Right? We don't like healthy food, so we don't like the Chinese. So one other reason why they didn't like the Chinese was that the Chinese, under colonial powers, under the Dutch, developed into a racial group, which was not the case in the past. During the time of the Islamic kingdoms, the Chinese were very open when they came to Southeast Asia, and they even wear Malay clothing. By the time the Dutch came, the Chinese suddenly began to develop this idea that they are a close group of people. And the Dutch, the British were also responsible for it. There was this idea of race. And the Malays also believe that they are a race. They use the word bangsa. B-A-N-G-S-A. In Islam, there is no such concept. Bangsa, B-A-N-G-S-A, is a term that was derived from the racial ideas of the Europeans that the Malays finally believe that they are. That's why if you go to Indonesia today, they will say, kami bangsa Indonesia, right? Or they say that kami bangsa Jawa. These ideas is a new idea. And it came because of the reaction towards mostly the colonial powers and the Chinese. And that's why until today, sorry Indonesians, I have to say this, there are always problems between the pribumi, who are the native, so-called, they call themselves native Indonesians, with the Chinese. Because they have developed these racial ideas about themselves. It's better if you are mixed blood. If your father is Chinese and your mother is Malay, then easy. You become what? Machis. Right? Your father is Chinese, your mother is Malay, you become machis, manis, whatever. But if you're pure Chinese, that's where the problem comes. And they were against their dominance in business because the Chinese only share their business with the Chinese, because Chinese have this concept called, and I hope I pronounce it well, kongsi. Right? Not kongsi pacha, right? Kongsi. You all know that concept kongsi? What's the meaning of kongsi? What? Share. Share with who? Warna. Cannot share Malayana. Right? So they only share among themselves, and the Indonesians were very unhappy. And they became a subversive political movement that combined Islamic traditionalism with European ideologies such as liberalism and later on socialism. And this is the interesting part. The Sarakati Islam said that we are Muslims, but we are also socialists at the same time. You see? So then there came during those days the idea of Islamic socialism. That they believe that socialist ideas taken from Karl Marx is actually in line with Islamic ideas. Some of these people became communists in the end. But many actually remained within the Islamic group. But these ideas were floating in those days. And this was how they looked like. So you can see their clothes. This thing that they wear on their head, this is the Javanese hat. What is the name of this hat?
Blancon.
Blancon. Blancon. It's called Blancon. But at the same time, they wear the Western suit. And then they wear the Javanese batik or sarong. So it's all a mixed bag of things. And you can still see this in Indonesia. They go for conference, they also wear sometimes Javanese clothing, but then they wear Western suits and all these things. All mixed up because of the infusion of values and ideas. But in 1918, Sarakati Islam became an Indonesian-wide movement with members from different strata of society. They spoke up against Dutch exploitation of the natives and was against foreign capitalists. Now, I want to clarify this word natives. This word native, that Indonesians are native to their land, is also a colonial creation. The Malays don't have an idea of natives. When they say native, they only know orang asli. Orang asli are tribes. In Taiwan, you have the tribe, right? That is the native. But ordinary Javanese, they don't have a word to describe a native. Why they don't have a word to describe a native? Because they don't see themselves as native. Malays are always moving around in different parts of Southeast Asia. But the Dutch taught them this whole idea of being native. The word they used was inlander. Inlander. I-N-L-A-N-D-E-R. Inlander. And the Malays, the Javanese, took it. The British also came up with this whole idea of indigenous. Malays are indigenous to their own country. And the Malays suddenly describe themselves as indigenous. So it's interesting. The Malays didn't have this idea. The British, the Dutch, the Americans taught them this. The Americans in the Philippines come up with this whole idea to describe Muslims as Moros. M-O-R-O-S, Moros. Which they took from the Spanish. And the Malays in southern Philippines also call themselves Moros. So even though the movement died in the end, in 1928, it inspired Indonesians to learn the language and the practice of politics. So Sarakati Islam did not live for too long, but this movement was powerful. Much like the Al-Imam movement also didn't live for too long. Malays now realize, hey, we can be political. We can question the Dutch. We can say that we don't want to live like this. And it became a movement that in the end inspired this man. Anybody knows who's Sukarno? It's not my uncle. Who is Sukarno? Indonesians cannot answer that. Who is Sukarno? Taiwanese people.
He's the founding father of Indonesia.
He's the founding father of Indonesia. What was the position that he took in Indonesia? Well, he was the first president of Indonesia. He had how many wives? Somebody was asking me about polygamy the other day. Indonesia, he has 5 wives altogether, declared. Right? And very handsome figure and very charismatic. The only one man who, through his speech, he could bind all Indonesians together. And he inspired this Malaysian guy called Ibrahim Haji Yaakob. Together, they became what has been called as the radical nationalist movement. They questioned Dutch and British colonialism, and they wanted merdeka. So take note of this word and Google it. M-E-R, D-E-K-A, merdeka. Anybody knows what's the meaning of merdeka? They wanted independence of freedom. Okay? I wrote actually a book about this, about the Malayan part of the story, how they were very much inspired by the Indonesians, and they called for merdeka. This man, his name is Khairudin Al-Hilmi. He was actually an alim, he was actually an Islamic scholar who says that Muslims must participate in politics and call for independence. And this group in the end helped to usher the independence in Malaysia. Okay? And we have also in Indonesia as well. Is there any questions so far? Before I end with these last few points, anybody wants to ask anything about the political movement? He's already down and up, really. It was a very late night last night. Yeah. Any question?
No, I just want to ask, did they meet any obstacles when they first developed the idea of reform?
Did they?
Did they met any obstacles when they first developed the idea of reform, such like it rejected by the people of the society, like the Malay people?
Yeah, all of them were rejected by society. And this happens if you ask for reform for anything.
Yeah, so how did they solve this?
How did they solve it? Keep on going. Simple. If you believe in something and you think that you are right, you keep on going. And the beautiful thing about these Muslim modernists is that not only they keep on going, they keep on producing, not children, but they keep on writing. They keep on writing, especially the Al-Imam movement. They keep on writing and writing and writing until when you write so much that people have no choice but to listen to you, or you build as many schools as possible, as many hospitals as possible. People will have no choice but to go to your hospital, or you set up your radical group, set up your political party. The British close it down, the Dutch put them to jail, they come out from jail, start again, do again, jail again, come out again, do until in the end you become so powerful. And that was what happened in India as well, as you can see in Gandhi. Right? If you keep on going, Confucius actually said very well. He said, you will reach your destination if you do not stop. Very powerful, right? It's a very powerful word by Confucius. Only I can say it in Chinese. So if you don't stop, your movement will become powerful. And that was what happened. One guy, I forgot to show you this, who keep on writing and writing and writing, was this man. And again, I wrote a book about him, which if you have money, you can buy it by $69 and $23. Don't buy it, I'll give you the photocopy version. Okay? It's this man. Okay? His name is Hamka. And guess how many books he wrote in order for Muslim modernist ideas to spread? How many books he wrote? Yes, give me a number. How many? 118 books in the span of 50 years. So this is a guy who's like, wake up in the morning, he write. And then he go out, go and do his work, whatever. Come back in the evening, his son actually described his daily routine. He will write. And then he sleep, tomorrow morning wake up, 3 o'clock in the morning. Usually because he's the son of a Muslim scholar. For Muslim scholars, if you are children of Muslim scholars, you must wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Why wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning? What? You have to pray for 1 hour. Not easy. I don't want to be the son of a Muslim scholar. I want to sleep until 6 o'clock. Okay? You have to pray for 1 hour. After praying for 1 hour, his son said, everybody in the house, how many children do he have? Mr. Hamka? I have 6. How many he have? He had 10 children. All 10 children will be listening. In those days, they don't use Microsoft Word, friend. They also don't use computer. What they use? Typewriter. You know typewriter? Everybody will be awakened by his typewriter. That was how he worked. And he could write 100 books. Now I want to ask students to write 1 essay. Yesterday, Frank was already complaining to one of his students. Where's your essay? You should have told him, Hamka wrote many essays in his life. So, this is the issue. They were so powerful because they keep on writing and writing and writing. So, this is some ideas for you guys. If you have any idea that you want to spread, what do you do? What do you do? Write. Someday, somebody will read it. And someday, that idea will become powerful. Okay? But don't write nonsense, of course. Okay? But keep writing, and this man is an amazing scholar who wrote so much during his life, and he was part of the Muhammadiyah movement as well. And last but not least, I shall end with this one, is what we call as educational modernism, where Muslims, as I was saying just now in the very beginning, they had their own Islamic schools, but now they reformed these schools. Rather than closing down these Islamic schools and let people go to secular schools or British schools or Dutch schools, they actually revamped educational institutions in the Malay world from rote learning and no proper systems of checks and balances. They emphasize on critical thinking. I'm telling you, when you go to the madrasas in the past, in the Malay world, you enter into the madrasah, what you have to do basically every day is, your teacher gives you a book, you're supposed to memorize the entire book. We should do this in NCKU. You have to memorize the entire book, and then you have to read back to your teacher. How do you read back to your teacher? You have to read back with a song. Yeah, that's the system. They call it kitab kuning system, or mangkul system. They call it mangkul, where you read back what you learn. So the modernists said, if we do this all the time, the students will only learn 1 or 2, 3 books in the whole educational system. So they reformed their curriculum to emphasize on critical thinking, and secular subjects were also introduced alongside religious subjects. Students in the past didn't learn geography or things like that. They learned through experience. Now, because of Islamic modernism, they introduced all these new ways of learning. I'll show you how the madrasas look like. This is the madrasa that my daughter attended, and she's already finished. She's going to university next year, and this is one of them, one of the oldest in Singapore. It has been around for 100 years. Okay. People who set it up is also part of my family as well.
Madrasah Zakaf has been around for more than 100 years. Our amanah is to continue the legacy of our forefathers, the founder of this school, Syed Muhammad bin Ahmad Zakaf, and the people after him such as Syed Abdul Rahman bin Taha Zakaf and Syed Abbas bin Muhammad Zakaf. Madrasah Zakaf vision is nurturing noble women, exemplary of the Ummahatul Mu'minin.
We have 5 sets of values. Among them would be resilience, humility, empathy, integrity, and teamwork. These 5 values are extremely important to our students and to the school.
And we are guided by the philosophy of in Allah we trust, with Allah we will be, and for Allah we shall serve.
In Allah we trust, they must have taken it from the Americans. But you can see the madrasah is very small.
Madrasah Zakaf students are driven to excellence at a very young age. We are expected to
only in our academic studies but also our religious and Arabic subjects. While it is a well-known fact that students of the madrasah carry a heavier workload than our national schools, I think the public also needs to know that teachers or asatizah and staff of the madrasah also carries a heavier responsibility in producing the asatizah or the ulama of the future.
Bagi pelajar-pelajar madrasah asal.
So like she was saying just now, every madrasah student would have to learn secular subjects or worldly subjects they call it, like English, Maths, Geography, whatever. And you also have to learn Islamic subjects. So my daughter, when she was in primary school, she had to learn 11 subjects. When she was in secondary school, she has to learn about 13 or 14 subjects. And later on, you all do A-levels here. You all don't do A-levels, right? Later on, during the A-levels, we follow the British system. She did A-levels in secular subjects and then diploma at the same time. So this is not easy to be studying in these madrasas because you have to learn a lot of stuff. Just to show you where, okay, this is she.
Learning purposes together with other ICT courses. Student mastery in the Arabic language is one of the best in the region.
Alright.
We always surpass the benchmark set by MOE for PSLE since the introduction of Compulsory Education Act in.
Okay, so now what the government of Singapore has done is basically to introduce new criteria for the madrasah in order for the madrasah to reform. So if you look at all of these madrasas, the reason why they become so modernized has to do partly with this man. Again, they always want to look very fierce in photo, right? And this guy from Kelantan, his name is actually Tok Kenali. He was the first to say that we need to reform the pondok or the place where they used to study is called a pondok. Pondok basically means huts to describe small houses where intensive Islamic learning took place, and the students would live in this pondok. So when you enter into a pondok, you must stay there at least for 10 years of your life, right? And basically your teachers become your parents. And this person was responsible for massive reform in pondok education. His name was actually called, he was called Tok Kenali. He has actually other names. This is basically his kunya, or sorry, his nakab, right? And what's interesting, again, to repeat what I said earlier, there is this connectedness, right, between Southeast Asia and the Malay world. He actually stayed in Mecca for 20 years. So just to tell you, in order to be an Islamic scholar in Southeast Asia in the past, you must study in the Arab world at least for 10 years, at least. Then you can be seen as a scholar. And for him, he studied for 20 years, and he returned to introduce infrastructural and intellectual reforms in the pondok. He envisioned that the pondok graduates would have in-depth knowledge in Islam and at the same time able to contribute to society as modern citizens. But, as the lady was asking just now, how did they actually introduce reform? Were there a lot of resistance? There were a lot of resistance from society. These people were labeled as kaum muda, the young Turks. So they were seen as people who are not willing, who are trying to destroy traditional values, and they were criticized for watering down age-old tradition. So in Singapore, my own family set up this Madrasah Al-Junaid Al-Islamiyah. It was introduced in 1905. Arab, Indian, Malay activists also set up their own madrasas in Malaysia, Indonesia, South Thailand, and the Philippines. So if any of you travel to Indonesia and Malaysia and Southern Thailand, please visit these madrasas, because you will see how they learn at a day-to-day basis, and how they also engage in modern subjects. These madrasas were modeled upon British schools, with Islamic subjects forming the core of its curriculum, and it became popular amongst people who wanted an alternative from British and colonial education. So this is the best part of the entire lecture. We are ending already. So what have we learned from this entire lecture about Muslim modernism? The first is that Muslim modernism, because of the efforts of all these modernists in the past, Muslim modernist thought became mainstream by the 1960s, when colonialism actually was put to an end. The ideology resulted